having been on the school board here at Lackawanna Trail for 17 years, it's very frustrating when you talk with teachers and the thing that they're frustrated about is not being able to teach, that they're spending too much time in the classroom, having to fill out paperwork and all these and testing rather than actually teaching. Most of the teachers that I've talked with, they want to teach. They don't want to spend their time, with the paperwork. And we need to get rid of some of that bureaucracy so we get back to allowing our teachers to teach. But then we also need to make sure that we're challenging our upper students, and I think that we need to tie technology into that. When we see No Child Left Behind has a purpose in that we're wanting to make sure that we educate each and every child. That is the strength of our society. But if we lower the standards and we're not pressing forward with the higher students or the students that have more ability, then we're not going to achieve on the world markets because other countries, and I've traveled to back in 1995 to Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, and looked at their educational system. And one of the things that was interesting to find out is they only test a top portion of their students. So we're comparing our test scores to their test scores, we're not comparing apples to apples. So I think that we need to make sure that we have programs that we can challenge our students.
Sid, anything to that?
We spend millions for testing, and depending on which side of testing you fall on, we're either getting the desired results or we're not getting the desired results. But we need to get our teachers back into the teaching mode and get them out of that testing mode, get them back to teaching. Let's make sure that our teachers are educating our students, and instead of focusing so much money and so much attention on testing, let's start focusing back on teaching.
So we're getting a little bit short on time, and I still have a few more questions that I'd like to cover. So what we'll do is we'll eliminate the rebuttal, and we'll cut you down to about a minute. If you go over a minute a little bit, that's quite all right, but just so we can get in these last few questions. I want to talk about firearms, and Dan, you'll respond to this question first. Do you support or oppose a law requiring that gun owners report lost or stolen firearms, and why or why not?
I would oppose that. I think that gun owners have that right to own a gun, and to have to report the stolen gun, even though they may do it on their own. I don't feel it's the responsibility of them to have to report the loss of the gun.
Sid.
Well, I support the right to own a firearm. I really think that if a firearm is stolen, it should be reported to the police. And I know if it was me, if I had a firearm stolen, I would want to report it so that then there's a possibility that it can be recovered and maybe taken out of the hands of someone who would use it for a purpose that might be dangerous to the public.
Okay, thank you. I want to stay in the kind of crime area, if you will, and I want to talk about the death penalty. According to deathpenaltyinfo.org, Pennsylvania had 222 inmates on death row as of January 1st, 2010, and that was the fourth highest number of any state in the nation. Death row sentences are a huge expense for taxpayers, much larger than the cost of life sentences. In addition, the American Bar Association, in a report that they have issued, declared that the death penalty is applied unfairly along racial grounds. What measures would you propose to deal with this situation? Sid, the question to you.
Well, while overcrowding is definitely a problem in our prison system, and it's very expensive, as you mentioned, I'm against the death penalty. I just feel that as someone who is pro-life, I cannot support the death penalty, but it's something that I would want to look into, alternative ways of punishment for our prisoners, for our people that are on death row now. But I just, again, I'm against the death penalty, and we just will have to look at alternative ways of punishment at this particular time.
Dan, the question to you.
I think that if we do away with the death penalty, that takes away from law enforcement one of the a factor that deters from crime. So I am in favor of the death penalty. I do know that I would look for ways of making sure that it is not racially motivated. Certainly would not advocate for that in any way. But I think that if we're going to deter crime, that we have to be tough on it and have those responsibilities.
Thank you. I want to close out with a couple of questions that pertain to redistricting. So redistricting is the way that the boundaries are drawn for all of our legislative and senatorial districts. Right now, according to the Pennsylvania Constitution, the power for how those lines are drawn largely rests in the hands of party leadership in the State House and Senate. It is too late this year to, even though redistricting will be done in 2011, and because of the length of time that it takes to pass a constitutional amendment in Pennsylvania, it is too late to change the Constitution now to be in effect for the next round of redistricting in 2011. However, legislation can be passed that would help to define and constrain the powers, if you will, of the parties who are working on that. So my question to you, my first question to you, and Dan, you'll answer this one first, is would you actively support passage of legislation that could be enacted in time for the next round of redistricting in 2011 to look at how we might do a better job of reapportioning?
I definitely would look to enact legislation to change the way we've done it. In the last time around, we said that we would not take, if a district was in one county, we would not take it into more than one county. We went from being in one county to now we're in 4 counties with 114th district. We said that we would not split towns up. We went from splitting no towns up, we now split 3 towns up. It's wrong. We have to do what's right for the people. And when you have one school district that is represented by three legislators, that's wrong. It's frustrating for the people. Definitely look to do it in a system that would be for people.
Sid, the same question.
I would definitely support legislation. I live in Taylor, which is this big. No offense to my hometown, but as representative of the 114th district, I don't have all of this. I have maybe this much. But we need to do something because our state legislators can't, there's too many important problems in the state right now. We have a pension crisis, we have, we're worrying about the drilling in our environment. Our legislators can't be worrying about whether or not the 114th is going to be pro-Republican or pro-Democrat, or the 113th is going to be pro-Republican or pro-Democrat. We've got to focus on what's important. So let's pass legislation, let's work on legislation that will redistrict in a fair and equitable way that's just for all the people of Pennsylvania.
And my last question goes to that issue of a constitutional change. The League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania worked very hard in 2008 to try and get legislation passed that would allow us to have a constitutional amendment for this round of redistricting. And I will tell you that I met with legislators in Harrisburg who actually said to me that maybe we shouldn't be putting this in for 2011 because you're impacting the people who have to vote on it, and perhaps we should be talking about 2020 instead. So I'm standing here before you in the year 2010, and I'm asking you, if you're elected, will you actively work to pass legislation for a constitutional change that will improve the way that we redistrict in Pennsylvania so that it will be in effect for the year 2020? And that question goes to you, Sid.
Yes, I'll start the day after I'm sworn in.
I'll hold you to that. And Dan, the question to you.
Yes, it's the right thing to do for the people.
Thank you. And I will also hold you